Alright guys, we are back. Small delay. I was just checking the delay with the YouTube. It was just a few seconds. Right? Any questions regarding leases, regarding the previous chapter? Anybody? Questions? Let me know now. Can you hear me? All right, cool. Right, no questions. So we are moving forward. So let me point something out that I didn't. We're gonna do an average of 2 chapters a day. Some chapters are longer, some chapters are shorter. So I just want to give you a heads up. The class is from 5:30 to 9:30, so I'm letting you guys know. Again, sometimes we leave early, sometimes we leave right on time. It all depends on the class flow, questions, no questions, chapters we cover, or not. Okay, so just always be ready for 9:30. If we leave early, we leave early. Okay, and if we leave by midnight, we leave by midnight. No? All right, cool. Okay. So land use planning and control. What does this mean? Land use planning. So land use planning is obviously planning how you can use the land, right? So a municipality can regulate how you can use the land, and private entities could also regulate how you can use the land. If you guys remember, I sold property to David as long as he used it as a hospital. You guys remember this? Right? So I also sold my phone. I gave my phone to my son Pedro as long as his grades were good. So there's a condition that's called private land use control. So I'm putting a condition on the property. Public land use control, and again, we're going to go over this in detail, but public land use control is when the government controls your property in certain ways. For instance, building codes. Right? You can build anything you want on your property as long as you abide by these codes. They control by eminent domain, where they can take the property away for a greater good. Like I said, I took Francielli's property because I needed a school. I'm Bruno Municipality, and I needed a school, right? It could be also by his cheat. That's a public control, where the government can take your property because you failed to prepare a will, and your heirs did not claim or potential heirs did not claim the property, so the government takes it. The other type of control is taxation. So that's the most common one that everybody can think of, is public land use control through taxation. They'll tax you, you pay. If you don't pay, they'll take it away. Simple. All right? So let's talk about planning, real estate planning. That's the first one. Real estate planning. Under real estate planning, right, we have goals of land use control. We have a master plan, planning objectives, development, and planning management. Let's start with real estate planning. I'm going to cross out real estate for 1 second, and I want to know, what does this mean? Planning. Let me know in the chat. Planning. We're not talking about real estate. Look, I crossed it out. We're not talking about real estate. I just want to know, what does this word mean? Planning. Go. Prepare. Organizing. Organization. Okay? Preparing for the future, of course. Goals. Future. Preparing. Come to an agreement. Okay. Organizing. Okay. You guys are just repeating. It's easy to say. Francielli, this is what you do. You write whatever Stephanie said. That's what you have to write there. Okay? So make it easy. Think ahead. Absolutely. Preparing. All right, guys. So why? Oh, now we're getting somewhere. David. Preparing to do something. And Fabiola wrote goals. The reason why we plan and what planning means is we're preparing to do something. We have an objective, we have a goal, right? So I'm pretty sure that nobody here started coming to this class without planning. And I'm not talking about planning of the hours you need to take. I'm not talking about planning of the amount of weeks that you're going to be here. I'm talking about you thought, well, real estate might be a good opportunity to question mark, right? Real estate is a good opportunity to question mark. Everybody has their own, right? So you have what's called a goal, an objective. For you to reach that goal, you need to plan. Some people are blessed with, hey, let's see where it takes me, right? So no planning whatsoever. But the majority of the people, unfortunately, need planning to reach the goal. So ultimately, real estate planning is reaching goals and planning to reach those goals, okay? So why is that so important? Oh, we got Laura in the house. Hey, Laura. Planning to build for the future. I just saw your message now. Sorry. Planning to build for the future. For instance, yeah, it could be for building. It could be any type of goal in the future. Okay. So while the Constitution guarantees the right of individual ownership of real estate, it does not guarantee the uncontrolled sale, use, and development of real estate. As American history demonstrates, unregulated use of real estate has significant potential for eventual damage to property values, as well as to the environment. Moreover, with the explosive urban growth in this century, it has become clear that regulation of land use is necessary to preserve the interests, safety, and welfare of the community. So, without a central authority to exert control, right, land use tends to be chaotic. And we're going to stop right here for a second. We're going to actually jump this. For a second, here's my question. Who remembers, raise your hand, who remembers the story of the Three Little Pigs? Raise your hand. Three Little Pigs. Okay, cool. So, who wants to tell me the story? I'll give you the mic. Who's going to be? One person. Tell me the story. Don't be shy. Chris, you want to tell me the story? Even listen. All right. Francielli, Nirka, Vanessa, Stephanie. Who's going to tell me the story? Robin? Come on. Don't be shy. Just one person. Verona, you want it? Okay. So hold on. You're going to speak. Good? Yesterday was milk. Today is Three Little Pigs. Right? What's wrong with this guy? Okay, go ahead, Verona. You can speak. If you have a mic, you should be able to speak.
Let me in, let me in.
There you go.
If you don't let me in, I declare their city sin, I will hump and I'll blow your house down.
Ah, we come with effects. All right, cool. So that's what the wolf was doing, right? Now, what did the pigs do? They had what? What kind of houses?
Straw. One was the last one was brick. It was very solid.
Yep, very solid. So you had straw, wood, and brick. Very good. Okay, cool.
One went to, so they all like ran to each other's house until they got.
Okay, why did they have to run to each other's house? That's the question.
Wasn't sturdy, wasn't secure, wasn't firm with the foundation.
Ah, there you go. All right, cool. I'm going to mute you for a second, okay? So, why the Three Little Pigs? Such an innocent story, right? But it's told to the kids about preparing, about foundation in your life, right? In buildings, in business, it's about foundation. So there's Three Little Pigs, and they all have their own attitudes, because that's about attitude, and we all have our own attitudes, right? And one says, I'm going to build my house of straw, or sticks, as somebody wrote, Robin, okay? Right? And then the other one says, I'm going to build my house of wood. It's better. And then the other one says, nope, my house is going to be a brick house. And then they made a song about it. So my house is going to be brick. It's even better. What happened after was showing the world that if you don't have a proper foundation, everything could collapse. But not only yours, it could also endanger everybody else. So these rules and regulations that we're talking about that were created to, even though you have constitutional rights to your property, it's yours, you can do whatever you want. If it's going to affect the community, right, then the government wants to make sure that you follow certain guidelines. You can still do whatever you want. You can build a house as long as it's according to these guidelines. Why? Because as we know, we have houses that are attached one to the other, as an example, right? And if one starts a fire, all of them go, right? If there's, you know, in certain areas of our country, you still deal with this, but if there's a tornado, hurricane, whatever, your house goes because of the structure. Other houses stay because of the structure. So the idea behind this is there are certain rules to protect the welfare of the community. It's not about, as some people tell me, oh, Bruno, they just want to tax. They just want money. I want to build whatever I want in my house, but they just want money. They want permits. They want this. They want that. No. Obviously, money is involved, obviously, right? Every government wants money. We know that. And there's a little set aside for corruption, right? But most of it is towards infrastructure and making sure, planning, making sure everything is done right. So we have to understand this. Over time, public and private control of land use has come to focus on certain core purposes: preservation of property values. What do you think the values are going to be on a straw house, a wood house, and then the brick house? Which one is going to be the most expensive? Which one is going to be the least expensive? So we just talked about foundation. The one with the sturdiest foundation most likely is going to last longer and most likely is going to be worth more, right? Promotion of the highest and best use of land. Balance between individual property rights and, again, public good, health, safety, or welfare. Control of growth to remain within infrastructure capabilities, which is what the town believes that's best for the growth of the community. And incorporation of that growth into the community consensus into regulatory and planning activities. Okay? So, there is something everybody should get. And that's called a master plan. Why is it so important? For you realtors, and even if you're an investor, this is the main thing. This is like predicting the future. Because just like I said a few minutes ago, we plan to reach a goal, right? And I don't know if everybody uses it or not, but every day I go home, right? Every day I come to work. And I use a little something called GPS. But I use it every day. The route is still the same. I mean, the destination is still the same. It's home or work or wherever I need to go, right? But the most common ones is home and work. Destination is the same. Why do I still need the GPS? Why do I use it every day? A lot of you are probably thinking, like, that's crazy. It's, again, same destination. Why do I use it? Let me know. To plan for a better route, for traffic, right? You do the same? Great. Changes. Yeah, because guys, even though we have the same goal every day, which is to reach home, as an example, right? Stephanie does the same. Cool. I thought you were going to say whatever a friend said. Because she says I do the same. But yeah, just in case something comes up. Time, ETA, traffic, slow down for cops. Yep. Ways. Anyway. Laura just said planning your trip, right? Exactly. Do you think that buildings show up from one day to the other? Meaning the guy that decided, oh, I'm going to put here a stadium. Let's talk about Barclays Stadium. Let's talk about Red Bull's stadium close by, or even the Prudential Arena. Do you think those were planned from one day to the other? I think this is a great place to put this here. No. A lot of these were planned with years and years, like 20 years sometimes. This is the ideal place for me to build this, right? So I'm going to use the GPS to reach the destination. That GPS in the sense of the terrible ideas because of the cops or the stadiums? The stadiums, okay. Kinda, because it also brings jobs. So kinda, it brings revenue and reduces your taxes if there's something else compensating. But anyway, let's go back here. So the master plan is like your GPS for knowing what is the town's goals. What does the town plan for the future? And is it possible? Let's go Red Bull, said Robin. Let's go. Is it possible that the plans change? Yeah. That's why you're going to alter the master plan accordingly. Just like your GPS adjusts because of traffic, adjusts because of accidents, adjusts because of whatever, right? The master plan is also adjusted according to new buildings that are put there, according to new roads that are placed there, according to new desires of the economic and aesthetic concerns that the town has. What is the town's growth? Where are we heading? Right? So the master plan has that goal, and then it allows you to plan for that goal. Okay? So that goes to the planning commission and then implemented by zone codes and permits. Great question. Where do you get the crystal ball that will tell you the future and make you a whole lot of money? That's your question, right? Very simple. Ready? Write this down. www. Ready? Let me make sure everybody's ready. www.google.com. Don't give me this stank face. I'm sorry. I always mess with everybody. Here's what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to put your town's name, whatever it is. So let's say Newark and then master plan in Google. Right? You're going to put Linden master plan or comprehensive master plan or general plan. But what I do recommend is that you go to City Hall and request it there directly. Most likely, they're going to tell you to get it online. But you should start getting familiar, because the same way this is important, online, they don't talk to you. Look at this. This is going to be a paper online. These are people online until you meet them. These are rules online until you get to know them. So what I recommend, even if you get it online, try to go to City Hall, try to get to meet the players. Not just the planning commission, but everybody else there. Because especially as a realtor, sometimes we go there on behalf of our clients to apply for COs, right? To find out what the taxes are, the real taxes are for a property. To find out what can be done with a property, what permits are needed. Sometimes we handle that for our clients or investors, right? Or if you're an investor yourself. So get to know the players. Very, very important. Build a relationship with the players. Very, very important. Treat them very nicely because you need them. I see some people when I go there, I see some people giving attitude. Like, I need this and you should be doing your job. And no, it's not going to help. It's not going to help to have that attitude. We know they need to do their job. But if the person before you was giving that attitude, how do you think it's going to happen to you? For you, I mean, right? So go there, be nice. Hey, listen, I'm going to be a brand new realtor in the area. This is what the script I try to tell everybody. I'm about to be a brand new realtor in the area, or I am. And I'd like to know what's the process for getting this, and that. And make sure that next time that I come here, I am prepared so I make your life easier. The moment you guys say, I'm trying to get info to make your life easier to them, how do you think they're going to treat you? I just did that at the water department not too long ago. One of my agents was having trouble getting information. I went there myself. Okay? One of my agents, actually, Mario, he asked me, Bruno, do you know anybody there? I'm like, at the water department? I don't, but I'll pass by because it's 2 blocks away. So I went there. And the information that he could not get, I got there, and in less than 2 minutes, I had the information and much more. Like, this person gave me way more information than what I asked for about the property, which was cool. Why? Because some people in that department recognize me, including that person, even though I never dealt with her directly, recognize me and know that I don't try not to give trouble. I'm very respectful of everybody that and their job, right? And understand, you need them. You need them. Okay? Okay? So Millie is here. She helped me out with a property a few years back, right? She's now one of our students. And Millie, did I ever treat you badly when you came to the property? No, right? You better say no, because you need the certificate to pass. Just saying. All right, so never treat her badly. I think I was very, very respectful, and I got her number the same day, and she was very nice to me. And I took care of what I needed to take care of when she told me she was inspecting my property. And she told me, hey, Bruno, you need this, you need that, whatever. Once you have it, let me know, and I'll come back, right? And the same day I resolved the problem, I sent her a message. Guess what? Instead of waiting another week or two, a couple days later, she was there. All right? She looked at it, said, okay, you're good. And I asked her, when can I get the report? Next day, it was done. All right? So it's a matter of, yeah, right here. Be nice when it's convenient? No, be nice all the time. Be nice all the time, okay? Yep, this was me. I mean, this is still me. And a million thank yous. Absolutely, because I appreciate everybody in it. Is there a fee? What? To the inspector? Never give a blank envelope. Never. Yeah, there's a fee for inspections, but that's for the master plan. If you get it online, it's free. If you go there, some municipalities offer for free. Some charge you like, I don't know, like $5, $10. It's really not much, but definitely get it. You can get it online, like I said. I still recommend build a relationship. Okay, still recommend build a relationship. This is the most important thing, because these are the people you're going to work with, and eventually, look, they come back to do some type of business with you. All right. So, master plan, very important. And this is a three-phase process to get into the master plan, right? It's the development of master plan, administration of the plan, and then implementation. What is implementation? Is determining zoning. Zoning is, okay, this is residential, this is commercial, let's not mix. Okay? So we try to keep it separate. This right here is industrial. Definitely don't put it next to residential, unless you're in Newark. If you're in Newark, we mix everything. We have a factory, and then we have a single family or two family right next to it, right? That's Newark. Newark is special. And then you have we have recreational and institutional, so schools, parks, and so on. These are different zonings, and the town grows. When I said Newark is special, is because until not too long ago, Newark was industrial, mainly industrial, right? So there's a lot of industrial zoning that's being converted to residential or commercial. So that's why you still find factories near or right next to residential homes. All right. So that plan was changing according to the town's growth. Very important. Okay. Again, right here. Public land use planning incorporates long-term usage strategies and growth policies in the land use plan or master plan, right? Believe it or not, and I'm not because Millie is here, but I have other people from City Hall in different various departments of City Hall that took my course or are taking my course. One of them is the senior aide to the mayor here in Newark, right? So she's taking the course as well, or registered. It's going to take the course as well. See what I'm saying? So build that relationship. You never know when you're going to need them. It's very important. And Erica says, Stephanie, Stephanie M. Love your doggy. Yep. I thought Erica was smiling at me and like, oh, Bruno's so cute. No, it's the dog that's cute. All right, next. Planning objectives. Guys, I already addressed most of this. When we plan is because we have a plan to go, a goal and objective, right? And these objectives will have to be implemented into the plan. So a growth plan considers the nature and location, extent of permitted uses, availability of sanitation facilities, adequacy of drainage, waste collection, potable water systems, utility companies, like a bunch of stuff that I think you guys understand. It's common sense. I highlighted just to be here. But you're probably thinking also, why do I need to know this? That's the town, has nothing to do with me, whether they have sewer mains or they have water mains or all this housing availability. What do I care about that, right? Very important. Knowing your market and the changes to the market is very important. Like I said, Newark was industrial. Jersey City, look at Jersey City. Jersey City properties 10 years ago were worth like $200,000. They're worth $1 million in 10, 15 years. Okay? Knowing the master plan, knowing the changes, what could happen in certain areas, okay, will give you an edge compared to everybody else. Will give you the advantage to make money. Okay? Very, very important you know this. Growth patterns. Okay? The types of enterprise and developments that will be allowed in certain areas. Residential density. If you guys notice in certain towns or certain areas within the town, right, there's more dense population than in other areas. You need to know these things because the more properties we have, right, the least expensive the property is, but the higher crime, the more difficult to put some certain types of projects into that particular neighborhood. You go to other areas, you might be able to do different types of planning. All right, so I have a client that's looking for land only, as an example, land only, to build probably the first here in the area, the first mechanic shop for electrical vehicles. Okay, so that's what he's looking for. Can I just get land anywhere? No, it has to be in a certain type of area that will allow, so most likely commercial. So I cannot put it in residential, right? But depending on the commercial intensity, right, it might not be the right place for him as well. So we need to study these things and understand the local market that you're in. I don't need to know the whole New Jersey, but I need to be the pro in my area. That's where I'm looking for properties for him, in my area, because that's what he asked for. Now, I know where I could place him and where I could not place him. Sometimes within the neighborhood, zoning changes within the neighborhood. You guys got it? So make sure you guys understand these things. It's this chapter, very, very important for your, all of them, but this one in particular, very important for your success. Okay? Accommodating demands. This is obvious. Right now, there's no demand for industrial. Again, we go back to the example here in Newark. There's no demand for industrial manufacturing. Should I have a manufacturing company move to Newark? Probably not. What Newark needs, because of the residential demand, what Newark needs is more apartment buildings, new structures. Instead of the 2 families, 3 families, 4, right now, we need to be another Jersey City or New York City. Buildings. That's what's happening now. And recently, Newark approved the MX3, which is mixed use 3, which means they can go up to 12 floors, right? That's what's happening in the Ironbound section or the east ward of Newark. You guys understand what I'm trying to say? Most people don't even know about this. It was all over newspaper, all over the news, but people don't know. They don't care. And then once things happen, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this. They're doing that. No. Okay? So make sure you guys understand what's happening and accommodate for that demand as a realtor, right? Based on what the town is accommodating for that demand, right? For that infrastructure. It also allows you, this is what's killing Tavine Kearney, yeah. But all these things, as an if you look at it as an investor, as a professional, right? It allows you to understand the market that you need to be in. Simple. The reason why we decided for this location where we're at right now, and we saw a few here, just to give you an idea. The reason why we decided here, one is all the development that's happening around. So we're very centralized. We're actually in central ward of Newark. But also we're right on Route 21. There's an average of 25,000 cars that pass by here every day. And during winter time, which is coming, so during the holiday season, right? It's an average of 34 to 37,000 cars per day. Talk about exposure. You see what I'm trying to say? You need to know what your client needs and program for that. Okay? Okay, we just talked about that. Demographics, trends, economic trends, existing use, so on. Got it. Public land use control. One of the forms of public land use control, guys, we already talked about it, is the building regulations, the zoning, and all that stuff. And that is called police power. I just want to talk about real quick, because you might get confused when you see in the exam, when you see this word. Police power. What does that have to do with real estate? Police. What does that have to do with real estate? Police, the word police means rules and regulations. So the government sets rules and regulations and then attributes that power or authority to the city. So it trickles down. But these are rules and regulations. And then when you have a police officer, it's somebody that's enforcing what? The rules and regulations. The officer is not the police. The officer is enforcing police. And again, the reason why I'm saying this way is because a lot of people don't understand. They think he's the police. No, he's a police officer, somebody enforcing. Just like Millie, as an inspector, right? She's not the police inspector or fire or whatever inspector. It's not like that. Being an inspector gives her the power to enforce these police powers or these regulations, rules and regulations. Does that make sense? So police just means rules. When you go see in the exam, if they're talking about which power allows the municipality to regulate or enforce certain rules, regulations, whatever, you look for police. Okay? Police power. What is the name of the app you're using? What? To do this? Okay. It's called Drawboard PDF. It might not exist for Mac if you're using a Mac or iOS. So just letting you know. Yep, Laura, I'm getting to that in a second. So Laura is ahead of the game on YouTube. She just told me the acronym I'm going to use for you guys in a little bit. So, yep, that's what it is. Police power is the first one in that acronym. Miguel, are you using is it Mac, iOS? Okay, I know one of my previous students mentioned that he found a similar app for iOS, so I'll ask him and I'll let you know what it is, okay? He mentioned during Zoom and instead of putting in the WhatsApp group, he put in the Zoom chat, and once I'm done with the Zoom chat, with the Zoom session, it closes the chat. I don't have access to it unless I go over the whole review of the chat. Okay, but I'll let you know. All right, so police power, we talked about zoning, we already covered that, building codes and so on. The next one is eminent domain. We talked about eminent domain. You guys already know that through eminent domain, the government can take your property, so force you to sell your property to them through eminent domain, right? But it's very important you understand that even though you're selling the property, in this case, we talked about this also yesterday, You're selling the property, but you're receiving compensation. They're not forcing you to sell and be out on the street. No, they're giving you money for it. All right? This is also within the police power and so on. We already talked about it. Right here, 6 common types of zone. Notice that I only highlighted a few of them, not all of them, right? So there's 5 main ones. Okay, there's 5 main ones, and that's residential, commercial, and then here there's 2. We'll get to them, but it's residential, commercial, institutional, recreational, and industrial. So we're gonna get to these in detail right now. Residential, you guys know it's for homes, single family, multifamily, and so on. Everybody knows residential. Commercial, we're talking about business, right? So that's some things that you need to write down. Commercial is business. Industrial, warehousing, manufacturing, right? So these are common sense, easy to understand, right? Now they put here agricultural and public. So right here, the public and agricultural should not be separate, but in different states they are separate, as you can see. Under public, that's what I want you guys to remember. Under public, there's 2 different types of zoning that are very important. Ready? Recreational and institutional. So under public, we have recreational, institutional. Why? Recreational. Parks, for instance. Institutional, you're talking about government buildings, schools, libraries, and so on. Right? So institutions, hospitals, institutionals. So what are the 5 main types? I know here it talks about 6, and they're a little bit different. But the 5 main types you need to remember is residential, commercial, industrial, and then under public, we're going to split this into 2, recreational and institutional. Okay. Plan unit developments. If you ever hear about plan unit developments or PUDs, it's like having a town within a town. So it's a totally separate segment within the municipality. So they have a whole tract of open space, as it says here, and then they transform that into like a mini complex. Let's put it like that. And within that complex, you have almost all the benefits. You can have businesses, you can have recreational, you have a bunch of stuff there, but it was planned. It could be commercial, it could be a combination, as it says here. So they're maximizing the space within a small part of the town. Okay. Zoning Board of Adjustments. So if you guys are not happy with the way, because things change, zoning changes. I told you, let's go back to Newark. I told you that Newark was industrial, and now it's changing a lot of stuff to commercial or residential. Manufacturing is out of here. For the majority, we have a section that still has a lot of manufacturing, but the majority of Newark is gone. Jersey City as well, and so on. If there's a change in zoning, and that change in zoning impacts your lifestyle or your business, whatever it is that you have here, right? If you're not happy with something, with any change, guys, what can we do? If we're not happy with something, we can cry about it, right? It's a very old saying in Portugal. I'm pretty sure in several countries you have this. If you don't cry, you don't get to eat. So rough translation, right? When babies cry, they're usually asking for something, right? They're uncomfortable. They need something. So if you're not comfortable with the changes, you can always appeal to the zoning appeals board or the board of adjustment, because that's where they make decisions. So the zoning board generally deals with such issues and appeals as non-conforming use, variance, special exception, or conditional use permit, and zoning amendment. Laura is on point. I didn't even get here. She was already talking about variance. Cool, cool, cool. There you go. Laura, your test is on the 19th. If I remember correctly, that's what you told me. So coming up. Doing great. All right, so if the board rejects an appeal, that the party may appeal the further ruling, the ruling further in a court of law. So zoning appeals, you change it to the 23rd. Why? Just get it done. Don't change anything. So zoning appeals. Non-conforming use could be legal or illegal. Special exceptions, which is for public good, and I'll talk about it in a second. Variances because of hardships. And amendments because of changing zoning. All right? So let's start with non-conforming use. Quick question. What is something that's conforming? Conforming. The word conforming. Does anybody know what it means? Conforming. In compliance. Yes. All right. I don't comply with anything, but okay. In compliance. Very good. To settle. Okay. I can use that. Adjust to standards. Yes. So, if you guys understand what was written here, these are all correct in their own way. But conforming is following certain standards to comply with current rules, to settle for certain rules, okay? So when we're talking about non-conforming use, it's something that goes against the grain, something that goes against the standard, something that doesn't comply with whatever was implemented. Now, non-conforming use is allowed for properties that were already there before the change of zoning. So I'll give you an example. Again, let's bring Newark and the industrial sites. Industrial sites converted now, most of them converted to commercial or residential. But because it converted to residential, do we have to tear down that factory and make everything, convert everything to residential? We don't. It's grandfathered in. So they allow, right? They allow the legal non-conforming use. It was existing. So it's not in violation of the new ordinance because it was existing already. I don't have to tear it down. Okay? So the non-conforming use could be altered though, right here. It could stay indefinitely if nothing changes, but if the structure is torn down, so if something happens to the structure, right, then the new structure must comply, right? If the same use continues, then you don't have to change, right? But if the use is abandoned, the current use is abandoned, then the new structure cannot be used the way it was before. I mean, the old structure cannot be used in the same way. It needs to comply, just like a property being sold, it needs to comply with the new zoning ordinances, with the new laws. Okay? Right here, this is a great example of illegal non-conforming. For instance, in this case, we're talking about a motel. Zoning changed, right? And it changed to residential. So if it's residential, a motel is not residential. You're sleeping there, but it's not residential. It's not your residence, right? It's a business. So if you change it to residential, once the motel is sold, the new owner cannot continue to operate as a motel. So now it has an illegal non-conforming use. Okay? So there's legal non-conforming where you're still within the guidelines. It wasn't sold, it wasn't torn down, whatever. Still within the guidelines that was before. If it's sold or torn down or abandoned, then it has to change to the new standards, or it becomes an illegal non-conforming use. A variance, zoning variance or variation, variance or variation, is where we're stepping away from the current zoning. So let's assume for a second that right here, a setback. The new zoning says you have to be 6 feet away. Most places now have something like this. Your building structure must be 6 feet away from the road. Okay, 6 feet away. In this example, it says that the owner has a setback from the road of 2 feet. Okay, the house is already constructed. So if he had to comply with it, he would have to tear down the house and move it back, right? So somebody allowed him to do this. Nobody regulated it at the time that he built it, but it would be very expensive to tear everything down just to move another 2 feet. So they might allow, when you appeal for a variance, they might allow the property to stay with that 2 feet only if it would cause an unreasonable hardship. It wouldn't make sense to force you to tear it down, okay? If the use does not change the essential character of the area, sometimes it might be allowed. If it does not conflict with the general intent of the ordinance, sometimes it may be allowed. Okay, so that's variance. Subdivision plat approval. Right here, where it says plat, every time you see the word plat, it means map. Okay, so a subdivision plat is simply a map of the subdivision. It shows the whole subdivision versus a map or a survey of that individual property. Okay, so it shows the whole subdivision. The developer submits a plat of subdivision. Once this is approved, then it shows all the buildings, just like a survey. It shows all the buildings that go with it and the intention of the developer, just like a survey, right? This is submitted to the city. The building department or zoning department, or whoever it is in every town has different rules for this. Some places have an independent zoning department. Some places have independent building departments. Some have it all combined. Some are so small that the town next to it is the one that controls the zoning in that one, right? As an example. So they submit this to be part of the master plan. Once it's approved, it's going to be implemented into that master plan. So when I was telling you guys about the stadium, right? The stadium did not pop overnight. Somebody decided to build, presented it to the city of Newark or the city of Harrison or in Brooklyn as an example, and the city said, okay, it's approved. It's now officially part of the master plan. And guess what happened next? Once it became part of the master plan, it was approved, all these tall buildings came around, right? All these new developments happening. People started buying left and right. You guys understand how this works? Once something is approved, that's why you got to keep up to date with these with the master plan. Once things are approved, you know the new direction of this town. You know that something is going to change. For better, for worse, I don't know, but something else is going to change, right? Harrison right now, unrecognizable. Like it's a totally different world now. Totally different world. So you get there's streets. My partner and I were talking about this the other day, where you just drive through it and like, wow, they put in more units here. There's like 300 units in one block, and then there's another 400 units somewhere else in roads that you're thinking it could never be done. Do you guys understand what I'm trying to say? So once something changes in the town, once one thing is approved that will change the town, everything else around will also change. All right, they just tore down the Bears Stadium. There's good stuff that's going to come right next to Route 280. That's why there's a lot of developments happening around Route 280 as well. So think about these things. Very important to have access to all this stuff again. So Newark will soon be having a skyline. Let's put it this way. The whole Hudson River is going through a major change. So get the master plan. If you have friends with money that want to invest, Newark is always a good investment right now. Harrison, all around the Hudson River or around the train stations, along the train stations, all the way to Woodbridge. Train stations are very valuable right now because, just like Stephanie M said yesterday, these people from Manhattan are just flowing into New Jersey. So you're going to have a lot of stuff happening, train stations, along the trains, and Hudson. Millie says, I inspect there. You are right. Hudson. There you go. Erica says, Elizabeth, straight train into the city. And the ferry. Finally. After 20 years of listening to the whole ferry story since I came to the United States, there's going to be a ferry in Elizabeth to take you straight to New York. Finally, it gets there. Okay? So, understanding these things will change your life as an individual, as a professional, and yours to your investors or partners. All right? Muslima says, all those buildings being built in Linden and Rahway along the train. See, I'm not lying. I don't travel that far. I don't go to those areas. I'm Newark. But yeah, I know that this is happening. You got to follow the trends. That's what will make you money. And the people that have money to buy land near these areas, just land. You don't have to do much. Then the developers come and pay you for that land. Okay? Then comes a Walgreens that says, hey, I'll pay you $20,000 a month for me to build a Walgreens. And you're like, oh, okay, I bought the land for like 30, but sure, give it to me. You see what I'm trying to say? All right? So, FHA requirements, real quick. FHA requirements. If you guys know FHA, there's something called FHA loans. We didn't get into mortgages yet, but there's something called FHA loans, and FHA loan is a government-sponsored loan. Now, the loan comes from Bank of America, it comes from Chase, it comes from Wells Fargo, it comes from your local lending institution with a sponsorship or insurance by the Federal Housing Authority. Okay? So, Verona, just have him sit down. It's fine. I'll give you a free pass today. So, like I said, so FHA. Now, FHA is not available everywhere. The government will insure the loan, but FHA is not available everywhere, only in certain areas. And for FHA to approve insurance and allow a lender to lend an FHA-approved loan, right? That means that those areas have to follow certain building codes. So FHA is not going to insure the loan if it's not within certain guidelines. Okay, so you have the building codes from the municipality, and then you have the building codes from FHA. Hopefully they will match, and you get the loans approved. That's how we get FHA loans in certain areas. Certificate of occupancy. I think everybody knows what this is, or as Stephanie M says, who? Right? Certificate of occupancy. Who? Vanessa C, in this case, what are you doing? Are you okay? Lol. Yeah, that's what you were saying? Okay. All right, so Vanessa saying lol. So CO or C of O, certificate of occupancy, is where the city inspects your property and says it's according to guidelines, right? So we approve you. It's okay for people to now occupy your property. That's what a certificate of occupancy is. Simple, straightforward. Eminent domain, guys, we already talked about this, and we talked about receiving that just compensation. So the government needs your property for a reason. Okay, it has to be for public good or public interest, not for their own private. Obviously, it's a government, not for their private use, but something that will benefit the community. And sometimes we're thinking of schools, right? Not always. I can acquire your property, let's say I'm the town, I can acquire your property to build that stadium. Now, why do we want a stadium? Again, revenue to the town, right? Redevelopment of the town, because if a stadium comes, more people visit for whatever reason, and they might stay, so now it forces people to upgrade the buildings or newer constructions. You guys got it? So everything improves with certain type of things. Now, to acquire the property, you need to get used to this term. To acquire the property, the government initiates a condemnation suit. Condemnation suit or lawsuit. So they're going to sue you, right? It's not a lawsuit like you committed a crime. They're going to sue you for their right to acquire your property for that public use. But why is it called condemnation? Condemning something simply means putting an X on top of that property that says it cannot be occupied, it must be torn down. A lot of people think condemnation as hazardous, right? A lot of people need to know now that it could be based on eminent domain. So hazardous or eminent domain, condemnation is the same. It must be brought down either because it's in a hazardous condition or because the government needs it. That's what the word condemnation will be. It's simply an X on top of your property. Bring it down. Okay? Just remember that. Condemnation suit. In this case, it's not hazardous. In this case, government needs it. Okay? Because I know if you were to see condemnation in the question, you'd be like, no, it can't be this. Right? Doesn't talk about the property being destroyed. Why would the government want to take over a property that's destroyed? Doesn't make sense, right? So you would completely ignore the answer that says condemnation suit as an option. Hey, Ms. Lima, you got a question? Some of you are way too comfortable. That is no good for you to study. Just saying. Right? I had this conversation earlier with somebody, and I said that I fall asleep just at the cover of a page. But if I'm leaning against the pillow, Francielli is laughing. If I'm leaning against the pillow, I'm gone. All right, Zlima, do you always get a payout when the government takes the property? The answer is right here. In exchange for the interest, the government must pay. Okay, so they have to give you just compensation. And the word just means fair. Okay, even though most of the times it's just a little bit so you don't complain, but it means fair compensation. They will assess your property and whatever value they attribute, that's what you're going to get. It's your loss. Everybody got to go. There's a building with tenants. Everybody got to go. The owner of building gets paid for the building, not for the rent loss. Yep. They'll assess the value of the building as is. Yep. Businesses, it's the same thing. Do they need to provide housing? No, because you have to think about this. Condemnation suits takes years. It's not something, like I've been telling you guys, the whole planning part, it's not an overnight thing. So they're going to send you a letter and say, hey, 2 years from now, I need this or I need that from you. So you have enough time to give notice to your tenants that they have to leave. And that's what happened to Harrison. Yep, a friend of mine had just bought a business in Harrison. The seller knew and the realtor knew about this eminent domain. He bought the business, a bar at the time, and I don't know if you guys know, but a business on average takes at least 2 years before it becomes profitable after purchasing. At least 2 years. Some could be faster. The majority of them take longer. But his took, after 2 years, he was doing okay, but still didn't recover his money. And then all of a sudden, here comes the town and puts a notice on the door that says, shut down, you got to go. Right? This did not happen overnight. The previous owner had been given notice by the town. So the previous owner knew. The realtor knew. And they still sold it to him. Right in Harrison. A lot of businesses were kicked out. Verona says they did that to my friend. They paid him to give up their property to build a school on Walnut Street. In East Orange? Yep. What it is. On South 11th here in Newark, they paid 5 properties to get out to build a school. We're still waiting on that school. This was in 2007, I think it was. Something like that. 13 years later, the school is still not there. But yeah. But like I told you, they give you plenty of time to do something. All right, next. Covered all this. You can go all the way to Supreme Court. All right, cool. So before we get to private, we're going to go to what Laura said before. Sorry. So before we get to this, let's go here. And we talked about public land use controls. That's what we've been talking about. So eminent domain and all that good stuff. Right? Police power. And here we go. These are the powers. Pete. Okay? The government powers are Pete. What does that mean? Police power, set of rules and regulations. Eminent domain is the right that the government has to take over privately owned property. Taxation, you guys know that you get taxed. And it's cheat if you don't claim the property, the government takes the property. Right? That's when you die without a will. Okay? See, Francielli, I shut up for like 30 seconds. And another 30, and now we're done. Okay, everybody wrote this down? We're good? Great. We're going to talk about private land use controls. You guys should know this by now. When you talk about private land use controls, it's a deed restriction. Okay, so if it's private, it's seller or subdivider or developer restrictions. In any event, it's the person that currently controls the property that privately puts a restriction on you. Okay? So private land use control, seller, subdivider, or developer. Okay? So, property owners in the private sector can regulate the land use to some extent. So property owners, private, right? And they do so through deed restrictions, and deed conditions. So again, guys, I sold the property to David to use it as a hospital. As long as he uses it as a hospital, it's his. The moment he screws up and does something else like office building, then it reverts back to me, right? If in a homeowners association scenario, the subdivider and the developer, or the developer, said the property has to have these characteristics. So there's something called master deed. If you guys remember this, we talked about master deed. It's the one that regulates the whole land. And then every property that's on it must abide by whatever the master deed says. So if you change the structure that was intended for that subdivision, you could lose your property. Okay, so these are private restrictions. Therefore, property owners or controlling parties. Okay, we just talked about this, the CC&Rs, restrictions. Now, these restrictions, we'll talk about discrimination in a different chapter. These restrictions, Laura says, my mic has static. Does my mic have static, guys? Is it staticky? No. Laura, if you can hear me, they are saying no. So it might be something with YouTube. Okay. So these restrictions may not discriminatory. So we cannot say, hey, I'm going to sell the property to you as long as no green people ever occupy or buy this property. Can I put a restriction like that? No, because that's against public policy. We cannot discriminate based on color, based on race, based on gender, based on religion, based on national origin. We're going to learn about all this stuff. So we can put a restriction. I can put this restriction there, but is it going to be valid? No, because it's discrimination. Okay? So in the past, a lot of people could do that. An injunction. And guys, the reason why I'm skipping a lot of stuff is because I already covered through my extensive speaking. So right now, we're just going straight to the point with certain things. So injunction. An injunction is an order by a court. Is the court telling you to do or stop doing something? So injunction means order by the judge. Okay, so that's what injunction is. It's an order by the judge to tell you to do or stop doing something. So they're forcing you, the judge or the court is forcing you to correct the issue. Okay? For instance, if you alter the subdivision, let's say subdivision says the lots here have to be 2 acres, and you divide that lot into 2, then guess what? You're violating what the subdivision rules and regulations were according to the master deed, right? The neighbors can enforce it by taking you to court. And then the court says, well, it was 2 acres, so you got to restore it to 2 acres. Simple. Very, very simple. Environmental controls. So these regulations are based on stuff that affects what? The environment. Let's go back to the story of the 3 little pigs. You think building whatever you want is a good thing? It's your property, you can do whatever you want, right? But if whatever you're building could endanger the society, right? Then because of, let's say you're building a manufacturing by the water. By the water, it means that you're manufacturing, which most likely has chemicals, because every manufacturing, if there's machines involved, then guaranteed there's chemicals involved somehow, right? So if that pours into the water, which back in the day people were dumping those chemicals into the water, right? If it goes into the water, then it could travel down the river or the lake and kill not only the marine environment or affect the marine environment, but also the individuals along said river, okay? So because of things like that, they started implementing environmental rules and regulations as well. So in recent years, federal and state legislators have enacted laws to conserve and protect the environment against hazards of growth and development, particularly in terms of air, water, and soil quality. Okay. Regional, county, and local planners must integrate environmental laws into respective land use plans and regulations, and private property owners are responsible for complying with these laws. Now, one of the laws is based on air. Now, the quality of the air, it could be indoors or outdoors, and we're going to go straight forward to the indoors. The first one we have is called asbestos. The thing you need to know about asbestos is that it was a type of insulation. Okay? So when you see asbestos, insulation. Something to remember. Okay? The problem with asbestos is that when you're trying to renovate a property, as an example, if you touch the asbestos, if it's been there for a while, it could deteriorate. And it could go into tiny filaments or particles and become airborne. When it becomes airborne, right, and I think by now everybody knows what airborne means, right? After this whole pandemic, airborne became the word. So when it becomes airborne, it becomes a health hazard because we might not feel it. We inhale it and it lodges into your lungs and can cause a bunch of other issues later, like lung cancer, as an example. Now, its use today is restricted. As of 1978, it was banned, so you cannot use it anymore. But removal can be expensive and dangerous because of what I just told you. It could go into your, you can breathe it, go into your lungs, and become very dangerous. So asbestos to be removed has to be removed by a certified asbestos inspector. Inspection by certified asbestos inspector is the best way to determine whether the building needs treatment. And treatment has to be by state certified technicians as well. You cannot just remove it by yourself, or let me put it in a different way, you shouldn't. The law says no, but people still do whatever they want, right? Especially those that don't know how dangerous this could be, all right? And it's very dangerous, okay? A friend of mine, and very costly, a friend of mine unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, not too long ago, and he got it when he was 18 while working at a factory that dealt with this stuff. And it lodged in his lungs. Nobody ever caught it. He got a pneumonia a few years back. And because of pneumonia and the treatment they were giving them, they did a bunch of x-rays and then a bunch of other exams. And they found that he had a mass in his lungs. When they took a biopsy of it, they figured out that it was caused by a tiny filament of asbestos that lodged in his lungs. Resulted in cancer. Unfortunately, he did not survive. He died at the age of 72 or 73 from it. But this was something that was in his lungs since he was 18. Now, good thing that he lived a great life. Amazing person. Probably one of the best persons I ever met in my life. Right? Really nice guy. Helped everybody. It was just an amazing person altogether. And he lived a great life. But he died because of this lodging into his lungs and causing cancer. So it's very, very dangerous. Do not attempt to remove. You'll never know when it's going to hit you. Carbon monoxide is another danger, right? It's colorless, odorless, poisonous gas that may result from faulty heating equipment. So if your appliances at home are not working properly, or even your stove, for instance, is not working properly, it could release carbon monoxide. And this is called the silent killer, right? Why? Because it's, again, colorless, odorless. So you don't see it, you don't smell it. And if you're sleeping, your brain does not react on time to this danger. So you might just die, again, silent killer. You might die sleeping. That's why it's very dangerous, and you have to have detection devices in your property. So carbon monoxide detector. We have another one called formaldehyde, and this was also banned in 1970, urea formaldehyde, or UFFI, right? Vanessa C is smiling because we had this conversation today. Urea formaldehyde, and she had a really cool way of saying it, and I'm pretty sure all of you have a really cool way of saying this. But just go by UFFI. What do you need to remember? Insulation, and it was banned, and then it was later reduced to a warning. This 1982 ban was a second ban, by the way. It was banned in the 70s, and then 82, they made it effective, and then later on reduced to a warning. Most places don't use it anymore. This one is very serious, and we're going to talk about it in a later portion of this book. Lead. So lead-based paint has been federally banned since 1978. This will be in your state exam guaranteed, or your money back. Okay? Lead-based paint was banned in 1978, and it's very, very dangerous. It continues, as it says here, to be a health threat, particularly to children, as it occurs again in airborne paint particles. Paint chips. It's very sweet, and the kids can grab it, put it in their mouth, and there you go. It could affect their brains, it could affect their hearts, it could affect a bunch of stuff. So very, very careful with that. If the property was built before 1978, you have to inspect the property. This is federal. Okay? Federal law. State law also has it. Mold. I think everybody knows what mold is, right? Is there anybody that doesn't know what mold is? Raise your hand if you don't know. All right, cool. Moving forward. Radon. So, radon is just like carbon monoxide. Radon is colorless, odorless, and it's also tasteless, just like carbon monoxide. So you do not know it's there until it hits you, right? The problem with radon versus carbon monoxide. Radon is a natural radioactive gas that occurs from the ground up. And in the northeast of the United States, we are very, very rich or wealthy when it comes to radon. All right, I can show you a map later on about radon in New Jersey, but there's heavy concentrations of radon in New Jersey. So for this reason, there's rules and regulations. Every state has rules and regulations regarding the testing of radon and transferring property and all that stuff. So because it's a natural gas, there's nothing that the seller's at fault and the buyer has to deal with. The cool thing about radon, it's very easy to fix by having proper ventilation in the house, or if there's no way to have proper ventilation, you need to install a ventilation system. That's all it is. So you need to pump fresh air and move out or circulate the air they have inside the house. Radon, carbon monoxide, and obviously fire hazards are the reason why you cannot live or sleep in a basement. There's a reason why most cities ban and states ban the renting of basements, because usually there's not enough ventilation in those areas. You guys understand? A lot of people think, well, but I got to make money to pay this mortgage. At what expense? Killing someone? You understand? Turn it into something else. I was just telling somebody earlier, turn it into somebody else. Turn it into a storage place. Rent it as storage. Basements, attics. You can still make money with it. Rent it as storage. You probably don't make as much money, but at least you have peace of mind because nobody's sleeping there and dealing with this. Okay? It's only when it's trapped in high concentrations that it becomes dangerous. All right? You guys good with it? So far? Great. Muslima has a question, so I'll wait for that. Laura said comes from the ground up. Yep. At almost every transfer, right nowadays, they do the radon test anyway. And this is something you cannot ban because, again, it's natural. Like, it just happens. Okay? Muslima says, what if there are windows in the basement? I knew these questions were coming. What if there are windows in the basement? Can we stick people in there? Okay. If you have an above ground basement, right, your town might allow that basement to be converted into a legal apartment or half apartment. Let's call it half, right, because it's smaller. I think I just answered Stefani. I think I just answered you. But if it's a below ground or mid-level, right, it's very dangerous. Even if you have high windows, there's not enough circulation, because having windows doesn't mean they're open. We're talking about circulating air, so the in and out of the unit, right? If it's above ground, usually you open the door, you open the second door, and there's a flow, right? Just having windows is not enough. Once radon tested is clear, can it come back? Like I said, it's a natural gas. In some areas, there's high concentrations of it, very high. So can it come back? It's something that's never, ever, ever going to go away. So you have to deal with it. You got it? Radon doesn't go away. You guys good? All right. Some facial expressions. So Yvette is just the way you asked, okay? I'm laughing just because of the way you asked. So I can pass the test and still get it? Yes. It's funny because of everything, not funny, but funny because of everything that's happening now. But yeah, unfortunately, because it's a natural thing that's always going to be there, you can test now. Let's think about it this way. You're a person, you're a person that keeps the windows open all the time. But then you sell the property to somebody else, and that somebody else always has the doors, windows closed, always central air, because we got used to that lifestyle, the central air lifestyle, right? Always, or the air conditioning in general. So it's always closed. Always the air is trapped. It doesn't circulate out, in or out, right? So the next person, right? The next person could be accumulating radon for the lack of ventilation, right? And even though, okay, so let me, probably some of you are like, oh, but you just said air conditioning. So if there's air conditioning, there's circulation. Not enough circulation. Depending on how you have the air conditioned mode, the air conditioners are circulating the air that's inside. The air conditioning is not bringing air from the outside in. You guys understand? Or taking air out. So you got to be very careful with that. Should we check often? I'll just put it this way. If you intend to sleep in the basement, let's say you're a single homeowner, single family homeowner, if your rooms are in the basement, yeah, you should. If you spend considerable time in the basement, yeah, you should. It's not that expensive, so do it once a year if you want, like 80 or 90 bucks to do it yourself. If you bring an inspector, it's probably more, but do it yourself. It's a little canister that you put there. It stays there for 24 to 48 hours, depending on the canister that you buy. And then you have to submit it to the lab, and the lab tells you the results. Simple. Okay? But yep, do it. Next. Skip these. Okay. Environmental concerns. You guys should be aware of these. Indoors, for the air and water, these are some of the issues. The BRI, SBS, VOCs, and this MTVs, they're right here. So it tells you right here what they are. Okay. It could affect you indoors. For outdoors, these are some of the issues that could affect you. Okay. Oh, there you go. Right underneath, it gives you what they are. And I'm going to move to landmarks. Okay. For state exam, it really doesn't ask you who regulates what in terms of environmental. The only two things you might need to remember is CERCLA and EPA. And CERCLA is the Comprehensive Loss, right here, Environmental Response Compensation Liability Act. This is implemented by the EPA. Okay, so that's probably the only one you need to really remember out of these for state exam. Okay. We're now on page 116. You want me to repeat that? You know I'm going to do it, right? Ready? That. What I was saying is CERCLA, Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation, and Liability Act. CERCLA. I'll talk about it better in the later on, or in a different chapter. We'll see. Okay, but CERCLA. Okay, so responsibilities and liabilities. Again, you're here probably thinking, why do I need to know all this stuff about carbon monoxide, about radon, about lead-based paint? Why do I need to know all this stuff? Because, one, you are the professional, correct? That's number one. Two, being the professional and real estate consultant, people will rely on you to know these things and at least indicate them on the right path, where they need to go, at least. So you don't have to know all these details in detail, but you need to have fundamental knowledge. So everything that you're learning here, sometimes you might question why. But again, fundamental knowledge. Okay? So like Muslima just said, to advise clients. You're not expected, as it says here, to have knowledge of environmental law nor physical conditions of the property or whatever, but you need to be able to advise of who can help you take care of these things. So in sum, for their own protection, licensees, because you could be liable for not knowing these things as well, licensees must be aware of potential hazards. We already addressed them. Disclose known material facts. This is key. Known. If you don't know, then you don't have to. But if you know about it, then you must disclose. You got it? So material facts must be disclosed. Okay, you must distribute the HUD booklet. We'll talk about it later. And know where to seek professional help. So if it's an underground storage tank, I just gave a contact to one of our realtors earlier today to do a tank sweep, soil inspection, and removal of the tank. So you need to know who to go to, right? Very, very important. We talked about asbestos. You need to know that you cannot do it yourself. You need to have somebody certified to do the work, and so on. Okay, we did talk about lead-based paint, and it was banned in 1978. The Lead-Based Paint Hazard Reduction Act, which is called Lead-Based Paint Act of 1992, requires the seller, so it was banned in 1978, but requires the seller or the seller's agent to disclose, again, I have it in green, which is very important, known. If you don't know about it, you don't have to test, but if you know about it, you must disclose, okay? The licensee, so you guys, very important, must give the buyer or lessee, so even tenants, must receive a copy of the HUD or EPA's HUD's Consumer Product Safety Commission booklet. It's called Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. So this must be given to every tenant or buyer. Must be given. Take note of this because you have to have this. Must be given to every tenant or buyer of any property that was built before 1978. Okay? Not only that, you have to provide a pamphlet, you have to provide a disclosure in the contract, and the seller is not required to test. Look, I have it in green. Is not required to test, but must allow the buyer a 10-day period to conduct an inspection. So, as a seller, I'm not required to test, right? But I cannot force you into the contract without testing. So I must allow you a 10-day, calendar day period to inspect for lead. Okay? And then it says right here, the very last sentence, it is your responsibility, realtors, it is your responsibility to make sure everybody complies with this. It's on you. So this one is probably the most serious one you guys need to remember, because it will be with you for the rest of your realtor life. Even if you live 100 years, right, as a realtor, there's still going to be properties that were built in 1978 by the time you reach your 100 years as a realtor. So this will be always with you. There's a lot of properties, older properties built. Miguel has a question coming through. All right, let's address that. Laura, if you have any questions, or whoever's watching on YouTube, if you have questions, drop them as well. Is that 10 days separate from the normal inspection period? Well, first of all, there's no normal inspection period. It actually is a blank in the contract, and we decide what the inspection period will be. So nobody's required to inspect. So when we give, let's say 14 days inspection period, or 10 days, whatever you want, we give 14 days, so 2 weeks. When you give that time period for inspections, in this case, it's already included the 10 days. The reason why we give the 10 days, most of the times, most agents give the 10 days, is partly because of this issue. Yep, lead-based paint. Miguel says, regardless of buy as is clause. Now you're getting into a different ground. So, as I said yesterday, okay, I think it was either yesterday or 2 days ago. As I said to you guys, when you buy as is, you're buying the current condition of the property as long as it's not structural. Lead-based paint is not structural, okay? Not structural. But the buyer must still be aware of lead-based paint hazards and have the opportunity to inspect. So even though it's not structural, it's one of those clauses. That's right. So it's one of those clauses that still force you to get it done. Yep. Got it? So regardless of being as is, for lead-based paint, the only other condition would be structural. That's you're still liable for it. It's almost like the lemon law for the cars. You could buy a car, 6 months later it breaks down. If it was something that was already existing and was not from normal wear and tear, right? You might have a way to get compensation. Does that make sense? So no matter what, in this case, you have to. CERCLA. So I was talking about CERCLA, guys. CERCLA was enacted in 1980, and then SARA came along, which is Superfund Amendment and Reenactment Act, and it was 1986, so 6 years later. And what I think happened, I tell everybody what I think happened, is a lot of homeowners sued the EPA because of CERCLA. See, CERCLA was created to take care of environmental issues. So if there's a spill on your property that could affect the environment, CERCLA would activate what's called the Superfund, and it's money set aside by the government to clean these things. The problem is, as it says right here, current landowners as well as previous owners of a property may be held liable for environmental violations even if innocent of a violation. Bless you. So even if it's not your fault, you could be held liable for the cleanup. Okay? So sellers often carry the greatest exposure, and real estate licensees may be held liable for improper disclosure. So if you know there's an issue, talk about it. So very simple. Anything and everything that affects the proposed transaction must be disclosed. As simple as that. If you know something could affect the value of the property, it must be disclosed. So a real property owner can be held liable for the entire cost of remediating soil, groundwater, indoor air contamination. A tenant could be held liable for the cost as an operator. This is mainly for commercial, right? If tenant operations are linked to contamination. There's different type of testings, phase 1, phase 2, to figure out the condition of the property, right? And these are links you have in the book if you want to know more about it. Oh, and that's it. We are done with this chapter. Not bad. 9:10. Who wants to do one more chapter? Nobody? Come on. Until midnight, we still have enough time. No more chapters? Vanessa C says, me. All right, guys. Tomorrow's, actually, tomorrow is Friday, right? Tomorrow's Friday? Okay, I have no days, so I don't know. So I'll just turn over nights. So tomorrow's Friday. Laura says, me too. All right. Sorry. In fact, tomorrow, guys, don't be disappointed. Please, don't be disappointed. But tomorrow, there's not going to be a class. Okay? Don't be disappointed. But why are you going like this? You're going to be like, oh my God, why? So I'm going to give you guys a chance to to study the first 8 chapters, to ask me any questions. So send me, I have something that I have to do, and unfortunately I might not be back on time. So I prefer to cancel versus, yeah, well, it has to be, sorry. Miguel says wasn't going to be able to get on tomorrow. Robin says good time to study. There you go. Do we have to make up the hours? No, E. Stefani. No. Okay. So don't worry about it. Let me tell you real quick about the hours again. And Vanessa de Matos is sad. Aw, I'm sure. Let me tell you about the hours again. The 75 hours is what the Real Estate Commission believes to be enough to cover everything. I have in the 4 weeks that we established, I have put enough time, enough cushion for us to go over all the chapters and still do all these Q&As and stops like I do and ask a bunch of questions, move forward and so on, right? So there's enough time there. So don't worry about it. The 75 hours are covered. What I'm concerned about is you doing all the chapters. So if you miss chapters, you have to make them up. That's the only thing, okay? Take advantage of this time off to review everything. So don't go like, oh, it's Friday night, I'm going to go out. Don't do that. It's only a couple weeks. Don't go out. Don't go party. Focus on this, because on the 5th week, you're going to take the exam. On the 6th week, you're licensed, and that's it. We're done. Then you can start making money, and you can party as much as you want. That's up to you and your work ethic after that. Okay? But for now, tell your friends, tell your family, hey, I'm out of commission for 1 month. That's all it is. Okay? You guys got it? That's the deal? Send me messages. You got my number. Miguel, I'll take care of that. Thank you. Send me as many messages as you can, whatever questions you have. If I don't answer right away, guys, as you see when I write in the group messages, I appreciate when people follow up with the requests. I get so many that sometimes it's impossible to answer right away between meetings and class. My phone is here, hasn't stopped for these 3 hours that we've been here together, 3.5 hours we've been together. So make sure you insist, okay? Make sure to send me as many messages until you get the answer that you need. Cool? All right, guys. You have an amazing weekend if I don't speak to you, and I'll see you Monday. Thank you.